Do you know that that's working?
It looks like it's working. Um, and you have no siblings, obviously.
No.
Um, and so you were born in 1943.
Right. March.
You lived in New York for 3 years.
Until sometime in 46.
And then moved to Chicago
Right.
when Julian came back.
Right.
And then lived in Chicago until you were 14 when you went to Culver.
13.
Culver. And why did you go? Why did they send you to Culver? Did they give you any reason?
Well, the reason they gave me was that Chicago had what were called regional schools,
Mm-hmm.
and the high school in my region was not a good high school. And so I was told that that's why they sent me to Culver. Also, I had been to summer camp at Culver, and I had liked it. And so it was sort of presented to me as you like Culver and the local high school isn't any good, so you're going there.
And you feel now like they were trying to get rid of you.
Well, that was Mom's theory. Mom, after she got to know my family, suspected that my father had sent me to Culver to get me away from my mother's influence.
Because your mother was a troubled person.
Yes, very.
Do you want to talk about that a little? Or would you rather not?
I'd be just as happy not to. I mean, she cheated at miniature golf with you.
Yes. She was definitely juvenile or infantile.
Right, right. Like a 4-year-old and tremendously insecure. And always one-upping or putting down.
So I didn't realize that she raised you without him for the first 3 years.
Yes.
She must have struggled to do that. Because
I've never thought of it that way.
she was not a generous person.
Oh, she could be very generous. I mean, when it suited her, she was very generous. She gave you guys gifts of $5,000 every year,
Yes.
and you didn't know about it. And there was one incident at the Lincoln Park Zoo when we were visiting at Christmas. We were going to see a flower show, and all of a sudden she turned around and started to tell you that what had been in the envelope that you had gotten for Christmas was $5,000.
Mm-hmm.
And I got very angry at her and told her we had agreed she wouldn't tell you guys the specifics of what was in there until you were older.
Mm-hmm.
And she started crying and got out of the car and ran down the street crying because I was angry at her.
Mm-hmm. So you think Julian was trying to protect you from her?
Well, that's Mom's theory and it makes sense.
And how did you like Culver as a teen, full time?
Well enough. I mean, I don't remember loving it, but I made some good friends there. I still have friends that I made in high school, several of them.
And you came back to Chicago for the summers?
Came back to Chicago for the summers and for Christmas vacation.
Did you work during the summers?
I worked at Spiegel Mail Order where my father worked.
What were you doing there?
I was unloading, well, no, I didn't unload the railroad boxcars, but in the summertime, the mail order company got the inventory that they would sell at Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And the way it worked literally was a train would pull up next to a loading dock, and this was unionized, so the outside union would take all the materials off the train and put them on the loading dock, and then the inside union would take them from the loading dock and would put them at specific places inside the warehouse. And so that was part of the job, was moving these big boxes or crates or cartons on dollies to where they belonged in the warehouse. And then we also did what was called picking and packing. There was a group of women who worked under a conveyor belt with lights hanging down, light bulbs is my memory, and these huge loose leaf books which had every product in them.
Mm-hmm.
And it would say, for example, ladies underwear, size 6, and it would have the dimensions of the leg openings and of the waist. And they would make out tickets that would say, from this shipment of ladies underwear, we want 2 green size 6, 2 red size 12, whatever. and you would go and you would find the shipment and open the boxes and take out the sample they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was another group of people who would actually measure them and make sure that was the quality control, to make sure that the product was what they had ordered. And I did that for 4 summers.
Did you like that work?
I did like that, yeah.
What did you like about it?
It was unlike anything I'd ever done before. I was the only white kid in the group. I mean, everybody else who worked there was, 4 or 5 years older than I was at least, and they were black guys, and this was their life.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very nice to me.
And you were there because your dad worked at the company.
Right.
And then you got into Harvard.
Right.
Does that mean you did very well at Culver?
I did very well at Culver. I was in the top 5, I think.
Top 5 people?
Yeah, in my class.
Did you have an academic concentration at Culver?
No, but I managed to talk them out of making me take 2 years of science so I could take a 3rd year of history.
You were already interested in history?
Yeah.
And you played some sports too?
I played intramural sports. I did cross country my freshman year because I was completely uncoordinated, and the only thing I could do was run.
Mm-hmm.
And in the winter of my freshman year, I joined the fencing team because I figured there was nobody who had fenced before either.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out that was when I got coordinated and I became a very good fencer.
Now, was there some talk of you being an Olympic level fencer?
Not Olympic necessarily, but I was good enough that when I went to Harvard, the coach at Harvard knew that I was a fencer and got in touch with me and asked me if I would come out for the fencing team. And I found out that they fenced not just in the winter, but from September through May. And I said no. I wasn't interested in doing it that much. And my senior year, he called me and said that the number 3 foil fencer, which was my weapon, had just become academically ineligible, and they were going to have a fence off in 3 weeks to see who got to be the number 3 person for the last 2.5 months of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And did I want to try out for that? And I had been good enough that I was able to go and practice and win that fence off and become the number 3 foil on the varsity and get a varsity letter in fencing after 3 months my senior year.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know how good I would have been if I had done it for 4 years.
And then after Harvard, you moved to New York?
After Harvard, I moved to New York. Mom was at Barnard, and we had met at the start of my senior year. And another thing were just chance. I was having lunch with the senior tutor at Harvard, and he asked what my plans were for after college, and I said I thought I'd become a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And get a Master of Arts in teaching.
And teach history?
And teach history. And he said, where was I thinking of going? And I said, New York. And he said, there's a fellowship program at Columbia called the Edward John Noble Leadership Fellows. And there are 40 fellows each year, and each of them is appointed by an undergraduate college. So Harvard got to name one person who, if they got admitted to Columbia as a graduate student, got this fellowship. And since Mom was there, I said, sure, put my name in. And I got admitted to the history department at Columbia, and then got this fellowship for 3 years. So that's how I ended up in New York City.
Why don't we stop here for now?
Okay.